we'll go for it. Were you happy with it? All the questions I sent over? Was there
Yeah,
anything
yeah.
glaring that I missed out, or I couldn't?
No, no, no.
All right.
Mm.
Well, it's all just. I always just send them over as a bit of a rough guide, but I'm sure we'll go off on various tangents. But it just helps people to
Yeah.
if they've got something loose to follow. But okay, I will jump in with my cheesy introduction, and we can go from there. Hey everybody, and welcome to the Rock and Roll Farming Podcast. And today I am heading down to London to talk to lead farming advocate at the Woodland Trust, Helen Chesshire. Helen, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good. Lead farming advocate is a very cool job title. Can you explain what it entails?
Cool is perhaps not the word I'd use, confusing.
Do your
I'm
children think it's a cool job
Well, when
title?
my children were little, they thought that mommy occasionally planted a tree and deleted lots of emails, but that's from working at home. Yeah, so no, I have an amazing job actually. I'm a bit of a jack of all trades and master of none, but I suppose the best way to describe it is that I have a national role with the Woodland Trust that is looking to how we develop our relationships with farmers and farming organisations so that we are all working together to understand how trees can work for the farming sector and that farmed land area, which we all know covers the majority, 70% of the UK. So it's a real mixture of building relationships with farmers and key farming organisations, supporting my colleagues who do the advice and actually provide practical help for farmers who want to plant trees or
Mhm.
manage their trees in a different way. We do lots of research looking at how trees can work for that farming business and deliver benefits for the environment at the same time. And we have this wonderful scheme called Trees for Your Farm, which through that we've met lots of farmers who are, passionate about introducing more trees or using their trees and hedges in a different way. And those are the powerful voices that I work with that then tries to help influence policy. So
Yeah.
I sit in the conservation policy team, but I do work right across the organisation. So we try our hardest with colleagues in Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland to influence our governments to support farmers in this area.
Yeah. And just a quick mention, you mentioned hedges there. I think sometimes when farmers in particular think of the Woodland Trust, they think of just trees as in trees that stand alone or in copses or in woods, but that does very much include hedges, as I have discovered to my benefit on my farm.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think the message we really want to give out. I mean, agroforestry is a confusing term,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
actually, the way that we describe it is agroforestry is everything that's outside of a wood. So it's your hedges, it's your shelter belts, it's your single infield tree, it's your clusters of trees, it's your wood pasture, it's your
Mm.
parkland, it's your rows of trees in alleys up a field. It's everything that's sort of outside that wood. So very much hedges are absolutely critical.
Yeah. Okay. Tell me a bit about yourself. Where did you grow up?
I grew up on a small tenanted livestock farm in between Leicester and Nottingham, so just on the border. An idyllic childhood of farmers in the village. I had my scruffy Welsh mountain pony that would live out with the cows, and I would go and jump on it bareback and bring the cows back. So we milked about 80 pedigree Friesians and had about 180 North Country mules that we've fattened for lamb. So yeah, we had Suffolk and Charolais tubs.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, and I was the oldest of three. I was the only one really interested in farming. So yeah, I spent every bit of my time outside on the farm.
Did you? And then have you always had an interest in nature and the environment, or even as
Yes,
a
but I
child
would
then, or?
describe it as a typical farmer's daughter's sort of life. I was very lucky when I was before I went to school, my grandfather was well enough to spend all his time with me, but not well enough to be really doing lots of
Mm.
manual work on the farm. So he and I would shepherd. We would climb the haystack when I probably shouldn't be doing, and we would just spend all the time outside. So he was always telling me about the wildflowers. My own father, was plant trees and in the hedgerows and things like that. So it was just more of a natural
Yeah.
sort of putting the two together. If we were lucky, we'd spot the kingfisher, and there was some barn owls in an old barn. And the farm was very spread out, so we only had a bit of land around the farm, which is right in the village,
Mm.
and then we had fields further away. So I would say it comes from a love of being brought up on a farm rather
Yeah.
than yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So did you always want a career in farming and agriculture in the
Yeah, I
environment? Is that
did. I was going to buy a Welsh mountain and be a shepherdess. I loved lambing time. So when I was about 8, 9, or 10, that was all I wanted to do. So yeah, I left school at 16, worked on a farm for a year, and then went to agricultural college. I went to Brooksby Agricultural College in Leicestershire and did the ordinary national diploma. So I was one of two girls, the rest were the boys. So yeah, the course where you had to do your whatever routine you were on that week, either milking or pig feeding or whatever before breakfast. Then you had your lectures. So yeah, so no, I had 3 amazing years there, and then decided I definitely wasn't going to stay in practical farming. I wanted to sort of do more. So I eventually went to university when I was, I suppose, a mature student because I was in my early 20s by the time we went.
right? Okay. And did you studied agricultural business then, right?
Yeah, so I did agricultural business management at what was then Y College, which was part of
Oh, yeah.
London University in
Yeah.
Kent. Did I was there at the same time as Ian Piggott, who
Oh,
has
yeah, yeah.
obviously gone on to greater things and founded
Previous
Open Farms
podcast guest.
Sunday.
Yeah.
So I did that. In between times, I worked for the Milk Marketing Board and also did the normal backpacking through New Zealand and Australia, where I did a bit of work on sheep farms and things like that.
Okay.
I was very much going to remain in agriculture, and did my degree. And then I got quite an interesting job when I graduated for produce studies, which was a market research consultancy company specializing at the time was when communism was ending.
Mm.
So a lot of the projects were funded by the EU or the World Bank, and it was setting up sort of trade for between,
Yeah.
Eastern Europe and Western Europe,
Yeah.
mostly in fruit and veg. So I had some great experiences going out to
Okay.
Russia and Hungary and Czech Republic and things like that.
Wow. And do you think that sort of you've obviously a really extensive background in farming and I guess that helps you a lot with what you're doing now, I suppose.
Yes, I mean
You
it
you
really
can
does because
understand farmers and where they're coming from, I
yeah,
suppose.
yeah, exactly. And that, you know, I think that is absolutely critical. And there's several of us in the organization that do come from farming
Mm.
backgrounds. And it's a really good reminder because when you're talking to colleagues and you just realize actually they have no idea, and why should they really?
Mm. Oh
They
yeah.
don't really understand the day-to-day practical challenges that farmers face, as well as the more global and external factors that are completely out of your control. So yeah, I think my childhood, just knowing simple things like when you see a sheep cast in a field that, when we first moved back up to Derbyshire with a young family, we moved into a really rural village. And the rumor was that there was this doctor from London and his family coming to live in the old farm cottages. And, within about the first week, the house just looked over this home paddock and I spotted a sheep cast. So I turned it over and I walked down and said to the farmer, look, it looks fine to me. It
Mm.
hadn't been cast for long. He went, oh, I said, yeah, no, I grew up on a farm. And the reaction to, they became quite good friends. It was quite interesting to see the
Yeah.
perception.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
So when did you first come across the Woodland Trust?
Well, not deliberately. By this time I was married. We'd spent a year out in South Africa, where I'd done volunteer work. So my husband was working as a doctor in Durban. And when we came back to London, I started working for Shelter, the homelessness charity. And then once we had a family, we wanted to move out back up to Derbyshire way. And so I started looking for charity jobs. And so my husband said, oh, there's one in those days, you just looked in the paper for jobs. It wasn't on the internet.
Yeah.
So there's a job for the Woodland Trust in Grantham. That must be near Derby. I said, well, it's in the East Midlands. So yes, not far away. And he said, well, the Woodland Trust, that's vaguely, you've been talking about wanting to get back more into the sort of agricultural farming sense. So and that's how I started. But I started as a corporate fundraiser with the trust
Okay.
back in
Wow.
1998.
Yeah. Okay. So you've been there a long time then.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. What did that role entail then?
So that was very much, the trusts were quite ahead of the game actually in terms of, working with companies, not just in a philanthropic way, but working with them in a partnership way, so that the trust would obviously get funds to do specific things, but the company was also getting something out of it. So it was the early days of cause-related marketing. So, for example, I was involved in the early stages of getting what is now a very successful partnership with Sainsbury's and Woodland Eggs. And so that is a penny off the box
Yeah.
of eggs that goes towards the work of the Woodland Trust. And, Sainsbury's then used that for their marketing messages. And that partnership has developed immensely and is now working directly with farmers who supply Sainsbury's. And so it's really quite exciting. But yeah, corporate funding is, it's take not the philanthropic element of it. It's where the companies are trying to improve their images at
Yeah.
one end right through to actually making real changes on the ground. But a lot of it is down to educating their staff and their customers and, looking at how they can make their supply chains more resilient. So, yeah, that was my first start. But for the last 15 years, I've sat in a different department and had this national role to work as our outreach work has developed.
Yeah. Maybe just if you could just tell us what the Woodland Trust is and how it works, especially for people who might not
Yeah,
realise.
yeah. Yeah, so we were set up in 1972 and primarily to rescue at-risk native woodland, in particular ancient woodland,
Hmm.
and also to create new native woodland. So it was very much focused on its own estate, and we have over 1,000 woods, some of which are these beautiful ancient woodlands. Some of them need restoring, and some of them are newly created woodlands. And obviously, we have every other habitats. It's not just trees. We have some bits of farms in them. Certainly have other types of habitats, but that we were expanding our estate for a long time, and that was the main focus. But since really the turn of the millennium, our outreach work has also become an incredibly important part.
Yeah.
And we've built on our sort of campaigning voice work as well. So that advocacy piece is really important. But we like to think we're one of the big charities. We work very closely with the RSPB, the Wildlife Trust, the National Trust, but we're not at that scale. We have about 600 employees. But we have this real delivery focus. So we're very much about using our estate to demonstrate how to manage woodlands. And ours are all, they're not perfect, but we are working to restore them. They're all freely open to the general public. So anybody can go in. They don't have many resources. There's only one visitor centre. Some have a car park, they'll have an information board, but they're just there for people to enjoy,
Yeah.
and for us to manage for nature. But increasingly, as I say, we have this very important outreach element. So we have advisors around the UK who will go out and advise landowners on how to manage their existing woodlands. So focusing on ancient woodland and restoring woodland, and then obviously creating new. And so in my area of work, we've got quite a few people now who are real kind of experts as agroforestry advisors. A number of them come from farming backgrounds, and when we sort of started this work, sort of focusing on agroforestry about 15 years ago, we very much positioned ourselves as we're not the experts. Our advisors have backgrounds in trees and nature. Some of them have a farming background, but we want to work with you, the farmer, to understand where these trees might work together. So over the years, the expertise is built across the trust. But then, we do a lot of campaigning, a lot of what we would call, trying to influence the powers that be at government and civil servant level. And it's obviously all led by a very strong conservation team. So they're gathering evidence all the time. And we have a very strong set of sort of conservation principles. We've just published our second edition of State of Woods and Trees, which is just a very comprehensive document which sort of pulls together everybody's research and current status of the health of our trees and woods across the UK, the role they play, what they could do. And that includes the urban environment. So we're doing a lot more work in the urban space now as well, looking at how trees can, as the climate changes, how trees can help improve the sort of the health and the mental well-being of urban environments too.
Yeah. There's a lot you do. How's climate change changed the focus of the Woodland Trust work? Because I'm guessing I think you said it was set up in 1972. There was actually a lot of focus on environmental destruction and things then. It just wouldn't have
Yeah.
been called climate change. It was probably part of the reason why it was set up. But I suppose since the turn of the millennium, we've all become much more environmentally aware, and certainly, very hot summer this time,
Mm.
unseasonably hot summer this time in the UK really focuses the mind. So how has that changed the focus of the Woodland Trust's
Yeah, no, I
work?
think like every organization, it was much more the word climate change wasn't used
No.
in the same way at all. And so obviously an organization like ourselves was accepting that it was happening much earlier and sooner. And it's been a messaging role, really a communications role, is how do you bring our supporter base and the wider society on board
Yeah.
without scaring, putting them off,
Yeah.
trying to be solution focused. And trees probably make that quite easy because everybody understands, from basic biology lessons, the role that a tree plays in helping to mitigate carbon emissions. So in that sense, it's been an opportunity for us to sort of use the tree that everybody's familiar with, that this is something that
Mm.
everybody can get involved in. Everybody can be made to feel that they can play a role so that this big issue, whether you believe in it or not at that stage, talking a few years ago, trees, so like I think our work with schools and community groups, we provide free packs for, the local scout group or the local schools just to create a small, sort of hedge or scrubby tree area with the messaging about the role it's playing for both the climate and nature. So it's gradually built. And it's, interestingly, over the last 5 years, we've really tried to make an emphasis that actually it's not just climate change, it's actually the state of nature. And you can't, there's no point just trying to tackle climate change. We have to tackle nature as well. We've got to help nature recover. The two have to be done together.
Mm.
So we're really trying to pull that message out much more strongly. And because I think this danger is we've been all focusing on, renewable energy and, this kind of thing. We've just got to reduce carbon emissions. But
Yeah.
actually, if you look at the state of nature, as you'll know only too well, it's damaged
Yeah.
and we've got to repair it if you're going to be able to continue to produce food. And we're going to have we're in a very lucky position that we live in the UK with a temperate climate, which is already challenging us with the extreme weathers we're now starting to see. We've got to get nature fully restored as well. So
Yeah.
that we're putting much more of an emphasis on that now.
Yeah. And I suppose that's where farmers come in, and farmers do control the majority
Mm.
of the land in the UK. And we've seen a lot of disagreement, conflict between farmers and environmentalists, sometimes environmental organisations in recent years. But ultimately, doesn't benefit anyone because no matter what, we haven't got income, and we've all got far more income. I guess we all want a better environment and more nature for our children and grandchildren and all the rest of it, a better planet. So in my experience, the Woodland Trust is really keen to work with farmers and not against them. I mean, I've had nothing but good experiences with the Woodland Trust, been really supportive in some of the stuff I've done. Has that been a really conscious decision there to try to work with farmers and take us with you on the journey?
Yes, it very much was. And I think if you look back at some of our messaging and the way we talked about that work sort of 15 years ago, we just basically said, we want to work with you to understand how trees can work for your business. We never really mentioned the nature benefits or
Mm.
the environment benefits because we knew if farmers were encouraged to manage what the trees and woods they've got already, and thought about where others might work for their business, then the nature and climate benefits would come anyway.
Yeah.
And that the message we were trying to get across is that if whether you call it agroforestry or you just call it your trees, hedges, and woods on your farm, if they are planted in the right place, managed in the right way for the right reasons, they will support your farm to continue to produce food, but they will also deliver a whole range of other benefits, whether it's water management, carbon emissions, nature habitat for wildlife. And it's one of the few things that if it's done well, avoids the normal trade-offs.
Yeah.
And so we was very much very conscious and, interesting battles internally because, coming from a farming background, I kind of like to think I know the normal language that farmers talk in. And it's interesting when the comms team get hold of something and you think, no, you can't say
Yeah, no,
that.
I can imagine. So what are some of the things that you can help and support farmers with? What are some of the schemes and things that are available?
So the backbone of our schemes are something called Trees for Your Farm, which is this pilot agroforestry scheme, really, because it's limited in its funding, but it's been going since 2013 and has helped over 300 farmers right across the UK to trial agroforestry. So it's a very bespoke scheme. It's only open to farmers, and what happens if once you've expressed an interest and shared your farm map and initial ideas, then an advisor will come out. You'll walk the farm, chat about exactly why you think you might be interested in more trees, talk about where you've got the wet areas, where you need shelter, where you would like some more habitat, where you want to, got an awkward corner, just understand the whole where trees and think work within your business. And then with the help of the advisor, design up what scheme, what you might work for your business. And then there's a simple application process. And then assuming it goes forward, we then provide you with the trees and the protection. So normally no money changes hands, and then the farmer's responsibility is to plant and to look after those trees. So that's very bespoke. So it can be everything from sort of a silver arable rows of apple trees in a cereal field, to creating small scale sort of wood pasture or clusters of trees to help with grazing rotations and providing shade and shelter in the livestock field, and sort of everything in between. We also have two other schemes which are open to all landowners, not just farmers, called More Hedges and More Woods. And they are designed really to fill the gaps of government schemes. So More Hedges, obviously, as it sort of sounds like it does on the tin, that
Yep.
it's to help farmers create more woodland. It's not really designed to gap up. It's more to create new hedges, sorry, and link up with bits of existing woodland on the farm. And then More Woods is quite flexible because, again, it's filling the gap below different schemes in the different countries for more woodland creation. So it's to help create shelter belts, small copses, and things like that. So again, that's where there's a contribution. Again, an advisor will come out for a more wood scheme, but there's a financial contribution that the farmer makes, usually 25% of the overall cost. But yeah, so all the information's on the website, the Woodland Trust website. But it's the idea is it's a practical help with the actual trees and protection with advice. So, and there's no commitment. You can have the advice, and if it's not right for you, that's fine. And the advisors will also always signpost to better sources of funding. If the government funds are more appropriate for your scheme, they will signpost and, make sure that you get the right scheme. Our schemes are funded, our Trees for Your Farm is funded by Sainsbury's, and our More Woods and More Hedges by Lloyds Bank. And, they're oversubscribed, especially our Trees for Your Farm scheme.
Yeah.
So, our advice is always to give best opportunity for the farmer to take. It doesn't have to be our scheme.
Yeah.
So that's a very practical approach. And then the other things we do, I suppose, which is much more my role, is about getting the messaging out there. So, you've done this for us, you've spoken at farming events. We host seminars at Groundswell. We've been to cereals over the years. We've been to the Oxford Farming Conference, the Oxford Real Farming Conference. We do local events, then some of the national sheep events. And we really want to, sometimes a Woodland Trust person will speak, an advisor, but usually it's one of the farmers we've worked with. They're by far the most powerful voice. So, we do a lot of that. We also ask farmers to host MPs and civil servants. And yeah, I feel a lot of the time I'm just an enabler. I'm putting the farmer and whoever we're trying to influence together. But yeah, I think that's what's been exciting about the last decade, really, is that the Woodland Trust, along with other organisations and some key farmers, have really raised the profile of how trees can help farming businesses and the environment. So there's some real high profile farmers, aren't there, out there, like Stephen Briggs and David Brass and, James Robinson. And, I put yourself in there as well. You've come from that more, looking at my hedgerows, I'm looking at the bits around the field, but you're all talking about it and, questioning quite rightly, highlighting issues, but also highlighting the potential, and it feels a nice, really nice, collaboratively positive
Yeah.
sort of noise.
Yeah. I think one of the nice things for me, I use the more hedges skins. We've planted quite a lot of hedges on the farm. We linked up one hedge. I think it was 5 years ago we planted it, and then another 3 years ago, and it kind of linked up two small pieces of woodland. And I've just got such a lot out of it personally. So yes, practically it's been really good, especially this year for shade with the cattle, because the one we planted 5 years ago is really big now. It's mixed species hedge and it looks amazing. But I I love walking along it, and without sort of getting too emotional and slushy about it, that'll be there long after I've gone,
Mm.
and my kids helped me plant it, and we've suddenly got barn owls back in an oak tree in that field that we haven't had barn owls on the farm for a long time. We had tawny owls, but not barn owls, and that can't be a coincidence. That there'll be field mice running around in the bottom of that hedge, and I just love that, and it's been really good for in an industry that is plagued with mental health
Mm.
problems. You know, just doing those small things and knowing you are having a positive impact on your farm, on the environment that will be there for generations after you've gone. I think is just such a lovely thing, and and
Mm.
and no small thing either. It's a big deal, I think.
Yeah, and it's a big deal not only for your own farm and your own sort of family well-being, but it's actually a big thing for society.
Yeah, I think so.
It all starts to make a difference. And yeah, it's what's one of the lovely things about our schemes is that neighboring farmers then come and say, "Oh, I've seen
Y-
what so and so's been doing.
Yeah, that's right.
Can I look into this as well?" And it starts to spread. And yeah, just the farmers, the innovators who are prepared to stick their head above the parapet and perhaps do the more extreme things of planting a row of apple trees in the middle of a field.
Mm,
They stimulate conversation. They stimulate, the people thinking about ideas that don't necessarily need to follow that. But yeah, no, I think and what we would love to be able to do more of really is to get that message that farmers are doing this out to the average consumer, because farmers get negative press quite a lot of the time
mm,
unfairly, and I think maybe that's one of the roles of a charity like the Woodland Trust, is that we can help push those positive messages, rather than to counter those where they're saying, quite rightly in some situations agriculture is causing water pollution.
mm.
Yes, that needs to be addressed. We all
Yeah.
know that. But there's also all this really positive stuff. And, I think it's just another voice, isn't it, from a different angle, coming along and saying, yes, farmers we're working with are doing this wonderful stuff. And, you're all benefiting from it.
Yeah, there's even I'll tell you an example of that of one of my neighbours, literally next door neighbour farm. We've got one of our hedges. I've done a lot to sort of gap up the hedges and obviously planted new hedges on the farm in recent years. But one of the hedges that is between us is a blackthorn hedge, and it's a bit gappy and it needs some attention. And he would be the most. He's just a very production-minded farmer. He loves tractors and cows, and he wouldn't be someone who pays a lot of attention to nature. But I had a chat with him one day about it, and we're going to work together to do it. And I was really surprised at how, because I wasn't expecting him to be interested. I sort of said, I expected him to say, yeah, you just do it, and I'll, whatever. But he was really sort of keen so we're
Mm.
going to do it together. It's only a little thing, but I just thought, oh, isn't that nice? But
That's really positive, isn't it? Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
think
really
so.
positive. Mm.
All right. So speaking of helping and supported farmers, what a professional link that was. Tell us about the Agroforestry Show and how it initially came about 2 years ago.
Yeah, so as you know, as you came and participated, we did the first agroforestry show in another heat wave,
It was
September.
really hot, wasn't it? God, I remember nearly passing out in that one. In fact, I think I had to go out one of the sessions. I don't cope with heat very well because I'm from Wales. I think I had to leave one of the marquees. Yeah.
Yeah, no, September 23, 5th and 6th. It was very hot.
Yeah, it
Yes,
was.
yeah. Yeah, no, the idea came really from, I suppose, the work we'd been doing with people like Ben Raskin at the Soil Association, who are also really massive supporters of agroforestry, and others, that were involved in that, really pushing that community of people supporting agroforestry. We held a conference back in 2017 at Cranfield University, just a one-day conference, sold out. And the best session was the session where we had 4 farmers showing little clips of their trees on their farms and talking about why they had done it. And we just thought, yeah, that was a formal conference. We had some great researchers. It was very well received. But actually, the bit that really lit everybody up was when the farmers were telling it, warts and all.
Hmm.
And so we kept on saying, Ben and I kept saying, oh, we really want to do a proper festival type show type thing. And so, yeah, we took the plunge in 2023. And I suppose talked about it, got Ed Colbert involved as our event manager, and then presented it back to our respective organisations saying, we kind of done quite a bit of work on this to the point it was virtually past no return. Can we have the official approval? And so, yeah, so we did it. We based it really on the idea of groundswell. We really wanted to bring, well, in this case, farmers and foresters together in a really practical environment with all the other supporting sort of organisations like tree nurseries, tree protection companies, the forestry companies, to say, right, let's talk about these things. Let's hear from people who are doing it. Let's make it a really open format where everybody feels comfortable to ask questions. So we had the sort of marquees of seminars. We were very lucky to host it on Helen Browning's farm, who obviously is the chief exec of the Soil Association, but also a farmer with lots of agroforestry in her own right. So we basically created a showground in the middle of one of her fields. So we had these lovely farm walks, which were far too popular because we had, I think, 200 people following her on one, which is just not sustainable. And we had some small demonstrations of, tree protection and, things like that. And we seemed to have a bit of a music festival in the evening because Andy Cato kindly provided Grubamada to do a set or two. So, yeah, as I was busy trying to load up the presentations for the next day's seminar, I could just see the big top sort of beating with the sound of Grubamada. So the weather helped. But yeah, so we created this, hopefully, a place where people were sharing ideas and feeling inspired that they could take, whether they were from the farming sector, they could take something back and think, yeah, that could work for my farm. And actually now I've met the people to help me make it happen. And it doesn't seem such a massive change that it's, something I've got to think about for years and years and years. And then from the forestry sector, we really hope that they understand where the farming sector is coming from, the difference in scale from commercial forestry to doing agroforestry, and how does that work, and making those connections, basically bringing everybody together. So I think it was a success the first time. It seemed to be, and so we decided we couldn't possibly do one the following year because it was far too much work, but that we would do one this year. So yes, the next one is coming up very quickly on the 10th and 11th of September.
Yeah. Can you give us some examples of when we talk about agroforestry, and I think you mentioned earlier it was trees outside woods, but can you just give us some examples of the different ways and different systems that farmers are using trees in their farms commercially?
Yeah, so I suppose if you take a livestock farm, you've got some elements which are incredibly traditional and are not new. So whether that's the way that you manage your hedges and shelter belts around your fields, it's how you manage your trees in fields to provide that shade and shelter, whether that's sort of traditional wood pasture or parkland systems. And then it's now looking at so some of it is bringing back what we class probably as traditional systems and thinking, is that right still for the way I'm managing my livestock now? But also we're looking at new ways of doing it. So things like living barns. So, if you've got a large grass field that you're taking silage off, you're going to reseed it every so many years. You've got to make sure that your trees are not going to impede with those activities. So one way is to have, but you might be thinking about outside wintering. So some of the farms we've been working with have been creating these sort of living barns. So they're like probably 8-9 meter wide shelter belts in straight lines, splitting your field up. So if you're mob grazing, you've immediately made yourself these nice paddocks.
Yeah.
The trees are establishing, you've just got the shade and shelter, and the cattle aren't and sheep aren't allowed in them. Once they're established, you can let them in and it becomes a living barn. You can deliberately put species on the outside edges which are suitable for browse. So you're really encouraging your stock to use the browse as well as the grass.
Yeah.
A lot of farmers are putting in browsing hedges, so a similar thing, but just a lot less land being taken up, maybe 2.5 meters wide. Again, splitting up big fields or replacing very gappy or improving very gappy hedges. More farmers think about either rotational grazing or mob grazing. And I think, as you alluded to earlier, we are going to get more heat waves.
Yeah.
And, Lindsay Wistance, who I admire immensely, who's the livestock researcher at the Organic Research Centre, as soon as cattle get to the heat gets to 25 degrees, they start suffering from heat stress.
Yeah.
And, if you look at the predictions of some of the weather that we're going to be getting regularly in the next few years, it's not a question of we might need shade some years. It just needs to be built into our system. So obviously you can have artificial shade, but why not have natural shade? So it can be around the edges of your fields or in your fields. And then, James Robinson always says that he noticed when he brings his cows back, if it's a hot day, they always walk along the track next to that. And obviously he's got the most beautiful hedges that are managed so well. So getting the shade from the hedges. So I think with livestock, it's a really easy thing to convince farmers that as we get more hot summers, as people are thinking about perhaps changing their systems to be a bit more outdoor wintering, then you've also got the wet and windy conditions that we're going to get more of in the winter, not necessarily cold, but wet and windy, which we all know is worse for livestock.
Yeah.
That starts, and if you think about how you want to manage farms with lots of livestock, less staff on them, you can use your trees to provide shade, shelter, browse, help you manage your livestock, move around the farm more efficiently. And then when they're housed, ammonia is a big issue, and it's harmful to human health, but it's also really harmful to the natural world. And there's a role to a degree of having livestock either under trees, because they will take away some of the residual ammonia emissions, or as a backstop to housing. And they're not the solution. We need to reduce ammonia emissions as much as possible, but they can act as those sweeping up tools. And they prevent water runoff if they're planted across contours, etc. So even on the livestock farm, stop that. If you're using fertilizer, stop it rushing off in a heavy downpour, which we seem to be getting more of. It's just, that's right. Trees are not going to solve every problem that the weather throws, but they can help reduce the impact.
Yeah.
So, in a crop situation, they help take out the extremes of the weather, so they can help keep the microclimate in a more normal space. So, a lot of it is around the edges. We're not asking arable farmers to suddenly start planting up the middle of every field. That's an extreme end of agroforestry, which only some farmers will find relevant for their business. But if you have your shelter, lots of arable farms, because they've become solely arable, they've got very gappy, their hedges are just, they might still be there, but they're not functioning as anything meaningful. And so actually redoing these shelter belts or hedges, they will slow down the wind, they'll reduce the evapotranspiration rates. They're not going to prevent the complete impact of a drought, but they'll reduce it. They'll keep more moisture in the soil. They'll warm it up earlier in the season, So, and then for some farmers, they do want to diversify, and they do want to think about nut and fruit production and long-term timber. And they're prepared to put those trees in nice straight rows in either arable or grass situations. And they're looking to maximize the sort of in the relationship between those environmental benefits of trees, roots going down much deeper, pulling up different nutrients up into the higher soil profiles, slowing that wind down, warming the soil around, and then eventually producing a crop. And if you do it well, like Stephen Briggs, you will get more overall crop of the two per hectare than you would as a monocrop. It's more complex, it needs managing, but that those habitats that you're putting in on that tree strip acts as like a super duper beetle bank,
Yeah.
because you're creating the sort of beetle bank of wildflower mixes under the trees, and then the trees on top. So if you're starting to think much more about using natural pest control, it's starting to build it in. I keep saying it's complex, so the benefits are there if you can manage it well. And there's lots of really different ways of doing it. You don't have to suddenly, as a farmer, suddenly become an expert in growing fruit and nuts. You could lease your row out,
Yeah.
and another, it's about stacking enterprises. You'll still get the environmental benefits of having the trees and some rent from the tree row, but you haven't got to worry about getting a market for those fruit and nuts or managing them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very flexible, isn't it? I I've increasingly becoming a fan of willow
Mm.
for grazing. For our cat, I mean, we're lucky we've got a lot of willow trees because we farm next to a river, and the banks of the deer carpeted with willow. But it's really striking, especially this year when we haven't had a lot of grass, how much the cattle will graze on willow. And I know that it's lots of studies have been done on how it helps them, how it helps their health as well. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
we've got a weeping willow that I planted. Some years ago when my grandfather died, I planted a weeping willow for him, and every year the cattle graze around it. They hang, and it ends up looking like a mushroom, but it grows back so quickly.
Yeah,
They love
yeah,
it.
yeah. No,
This,
there's lots of studies, aren't there?
yeah,
On both the nutritional and the medicinal benefits, and it's got the
mm,
salicylic acid in it. So, yeah, again, it's that if you've got enough of it or enough access to it,
mm,
then the stock will self-medicate. They'll browse on it when they want to. I mean, I do remember as a child when we turned the young stock out in the spring, and we had this typical Italian ryegrass
mm,
grass lays for the dairy cows. You turn the young stock out, beautiful, lush, looks lovely, lush green grass. No variety in it, but it looked amazing. And
yeah,
they'd shoot off and they browse the
about
hedgerows.
the edges. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's
So yeah,
interesting.
there's definitely something there. So
Yeah,
yes, at the Agroforestry Show, we will have sessions on tree browse from Lindsay Wisdance, who is the real guru on it, all of this. But yeah.
yeah. Who's? I mean, you've mentioned some of the names of people doing it. Who are doing this really well. Steve Briggs. I bet probably 99% of farmers have surely seen Steve talk about this, and he's so engaging and fun when he presents on it as well. But have you got any sort of particular farmers who are doing this really well or doing it in an interesting way?
Yeah, there's a whole, yeah, building a quite a community of them really. So I think, and it's so diverse. So I think somebody like James Robinson, who has been managing his hedgerows, learnt from his own father, who learnt from
Hmm.
his father, that is a really good example of a, big productive dairy farm who has always been doing it, but is now doing more because he says the climate is changing. I need even more. So he's got these
Yeah,
lovely hedges that are all managed on rotation. He's got beautiful wetland. It's a really nature-full farm, and it works for his stock. But he said, no, I've now got to put more in. So he's now doing some very planned wood pasture, and thinking about how he can get more shade and shelter into his, grass-based dairy system. So that's not doing things that are unusual, it's just thinking about the future. How do I make this farm work for the livestock in light of what the weather's going to be throwing at us over the next decade or so? And yes, so it doesn't have to be extreme. And yeah, there's, another sheep farmer in Leicestershire. He's a first generation farmer, actually, arable and sheep. Massively inspired by a trip that I think was organised by the National Sheep Association to go and see farms over in Europe, and came back going, oh, trees, actually, that makes sense.
mm,
So he's now doing, alley cropping in his arable rotations, and has now gone on to do more. So he's got a really interesting perception of it, because again, hadn't really thought about it, and is now, yeah, been out, looked at it in practice, spoken to lots of people. The Woodland Trust have helped him with his first plantings, but now he's very happy to talk about it and say, yeah, it's early days. And of course, people like Nick and Paul Renison up in Cumbria. I
yeah,
mean, they spoke at the very first conference back in 2017, and she was hilarious because she said, we nearly got divorced in front of the hedge planting contractor because I said, you can't possibly take that much land out. It's far too much space. But she said within 2 or 3 years, the shelter was already there.
Yeah,
And it's, now they've put lots of browsing, they've split some of their really big fields up with browsing hedges. They're complete mob grazing. It's well and truly working for them. Yeah, and there's lots of, increasingly numbers of arable farmers who are starting it. There are challenges, if we can't
of
get
course.
deer control,
Yeah,
then that is a really big
yeah,
challenge to get trees established, and that's becoming a problem in lots of parts of the UK. So,
yeah,
and there's lots of discussions on that as how do we best address that? Tree protection is expensive. The trees themselves, unless you're doing fruit and nut trees, are not expensive, as you
mm,
know. It's the protection. So in a livestock system, getting the protection is right. So there's lots of farmers who are experimenting. I mean, we did a lot of work with Tim Downs, over a decade ago with his dairy herd, and he's used electric fencing and stuff like that. And everybody's learning how to best do it that's in a way that is affordable and effective.
yeah,
But yeah, and there's hubs of farmers, so there's quite a lot in the southwest where they've all been doing it each other, and yeah.
yes. It feels like this is the time for this right now in the UK in terms of farming because obviously the sustainable farming scheme in Wales, the sustainable farming initiative in England, that it's had its few bumps in the road with that, but presumably a lot of the work you do is talking to ministers and policymakers about this as well and what works on farms and what doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, we have to sort of take stock that back in 2014, DEFRA said we're not taking the agroforestry options up in CAP, Common Agriculture Policies. We were all in at that stage.
Yeah,
No interest, no relevance to English farmers. Move forward 10 years, and we do open
yeah,
agroforestry options in SFI.
yeah,
Unfortunately, then it gets closed in March 2025. So,
yes,
but we have to, excuse me, acknowledge that there is an acceptance, I think, by all the governments that agroforestry has a role to play. They've all got targets to meet in terms of turning around nature recovery and impacts of climate change, and there is an acceptance. So it's really positive that schemes are being designed, and I think I'm not as close to Wales, Scotland, or Northern Ireland as I have colleagues working in those countries, but all four governments seem to want to support it. We're just not quite there yet. So, I've seen that what was designed in the SFI, and I think it's a good start. We just need it to open again,
yeah,
and support farmers. So I completely understand farmers' frustrations. This stop start, and in England, the capital grants
mm,
scheme was opened, and the demand was such, which obviously is positive, that it closed again in 4 weeks. It must be incredibly difficult trying to plan your
yeah,
businesses. So, but I do think there is a role. The government should be supporting this. We should be supporting farmers to transition to a more, whatever you want to call it, regenerative farming, nature-friendly farming, obviously the Woodland Trust completely supports the concept that farmers should be funded to deliver those public goods. But we need to make sure those schemes
yeah,
work, correctly
yeah,
funded, and have some long-term longevity to them, because
yeah,
we can't have this stop start. So we are continuing to work, and we were involved certainly in England with a couple of DEFRA testing trials on agroforestry with other partners, which was positive. We felt we really could engage with them. There's a lot, certainly, the people I work with in the Forestry Commission and Natural England, they want this to work. And I know my colleagues in Wales have been working with with yourselves and the Welsh government. And again, there is a desire to make it work,
mm,
but we've got to make it work for the farm and the government purse, unfortunately.
yeah. What are you particularly looking forward to at the Agroforestry Show? What you think are going to be some of the highlights for you?
Um, Well, we've got some great speakers and some really interesting sessions, of one of which you're involved in. So yeah, we've got lots of interesting talks about very specific things like on, if you wanted to start growing nuts, but there's also a brilliant session about that climate resilient piece led by Claire Whittle, who's the regenerative vet come farmer now. So that will be a really interesting. That is really well, a lot about what we've been talking about this morning about how you sort of build that natural infrastructure into your farm so it can survive the changing climate. There's lots on things like biodiversity net gain, and the actual farm that's hosting it is creating a habitat bank. So there'll be a walk to see what they're looking to put into their
Cool.
biodiversity net gain. The farm itself has got a lot of woodland on it. It's got 75 acres of woodland, some of which is ancient woodland. Typical woodland, relatively small, largely unmanaged, so very typical to what most farms, lots of farms have. So there'll be a lot of sessions on looking at sort of woodland management and how to bring, what you can do and how to make that work within a farm business. So it's got a much more holistic approach than the previous show, I suppose. Yes, it's agroforestry, but it's also that whole farm approach to any trees and woods on your farm. We've got a training hub, which is new this time. So that's being brought by Reforest, which is a European funded project led by Reading University and the Organic Research Centre in this UK. So they'll be doing lots of short, sharp sessions where either a farmer or an advisor, so we'll be sort of just digging in deep to what they've been doing. So Lindsay will be talking about tree fodder. There's several farmers who are talking about their own experiences, just half an hour slots that you can ask questions quite informally. And also there'll be lots of demonstration of tools. So tools that aren't out yet but are being developed to look at the economics of agroforestry. And then Landac will be there with their tools to how you help use their system to design. There'll be other sessions on designing agroforestry. Then we've got the Advice Hub, which we trialed last time, is come back bigger and better, building on what we've done at Groundswell as well. So any farmer can either pre-book or join, or just sign up when they're at the show to get a 45-minute one-to-one slot, sit down with an advisor at whatever stage you are, whether you're just thinking about it, whether you've already done it and you want some advice on how to manage it. There'll be advisors from the Woodland Trust, Soil Association, Forestry Commission, Natural England, FWAG, Southwest. They're available all the time, and loads of farm walks. We're going to do more, so we don't get 100 people on each one this time. And the farm itself also has several, because it is really peri-urban. It's split by the M25. So there are other enterprises on it. So there's a market garden, there's a flower grower, there's a brewery, and a cafe. So
Now you're talking. That's the way to sell it to farmers.
Oh yes, no, there's a brewery and they are providing all the drinks, and there will be evening entertainment. We can't we're not having Groove Armada this time, but we have two bands and lots of local food outlets and the brewery from on the farm. And we've got like a dusk walk with an ecologist. We've got music. Yes, we've got it is, sorry, I'm being a bad salesperson, but it's going to be a festival again of sharing knowledge and learning and getting away from the farm for a couple of days and hopefully going away inspired.
Yeah, it sounds like a whole lot of fun.
So we hope it doesn't rain.
Yeah, they are giving the weather to change, aren't they, next week? But I'm sure
No, it's a very dry ground, so it's fine. We can cope with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you've learned about agroforestry that's really surprised, even as someone who works for the Woodland Trust and Farm, is there anything that's really just blown you away? Any facts or any, I don't know, any systems that have just, oh my God, that's incredible.
One unusual thing, which again comes from Stephen Briggs's experience, is that he's now finding that the yield of his crop right next to his apple tree is higher than the yield in the middle of the alley.
Yeah.
And so the idea that the shade from the trees will limit your yield seems to be wrong. And,
That really surprised me as well.
Yeah.
I have to say, it really did amaze me when I saw him talk about it in a presentation, and he sort of showed the crops in the
Yeah. Well, I think it surprised him as well.
Yeah.
I know there's some caveats to that because his are fruit trees, and now they are very mature, they're not timber trees. So obviously you would have a different impact with with timber, but presumably there is something to do with the
Mm,
better nutrients that are coming up through the soil, through the leaf litter, the tree litter, and leaf litter, and just the
yeah.
recycling of the from deeper down. Maybe, yeah, it's yeah. So that was surprising, and I suppose the only other thing is that, and I hope it stays like this, it's just such a wonderfully warm community of everybody that's involved in agroforestry, whether they're farmers, researchers, advisors, people like me who are a bit of jack of all trades. It's just a really nice, positive
Yeah.
sharing of experience. If we can't, if this is not working, let's see if we can collectively find a
Mm,
solution. So that's yeah. I hope that stays. It's not a competitive space. It's a
mm,
solution focused space.
yeah. Okay. So where can listeners go to find out more? What's the website?
So it's the agroforestryshow.com. And it's got the full program is now listed. And as I say, it's 2 days, 10th and 11th of September at Woodoaks Farm, which, as I say, is split by the M25. It's in Hertfordshire. It's very easy to get to. And if you want to come on public transport, then you get to Rickmansworth, and there'll be buses. So it's lots of camping on site, and yeah, so come and join us.
Fantastic. All right. Let's wrap this up with the traditional hard-hitting questions, Helen. What's the best gig you've ever been to? Music, comedy, anything?
Well, I'm a bit of a Nick Cave fan, so I've been three or
Ah,
four
are
times to
you?
see Nick Cave. Yes.
Wow. Oh,
Yeah,
that's
so that would be
fantastic.
the best. Yeah. So, and the best time probably was at Victoria Park when he had the amazing three back singers, and then Warren Ellis was just doing his nut running up and down.
I heard, where did I hear him into? Was he on Desert Island Discs not long ago? I heard him
Yeah, yeah,
interviewed.
yeah,
Yeah, it
yeah,
was really powerful. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But I have been. We did go and see Bruce Springsteen, which I see is on your
It
t-shirt.
is. It is.
Yeah.
I'm the world's biggest Bruce fan. Yeah. I've
We went
been
to see him in Marseille this summer because he cancelled the year before, so we had to go back to Marseille.
Yeah, okay.
But he was
I've
very good.
seen him a few times in the last couple of years. I went to Dublin a few years ago to see him. It was incredible. But what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
I struggled with this, but yeah, I suppose as I work for the Woodland Trust, and it is kind of relevant to my personal life, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. So from a work point of view, that is obviously very
Yeah.
strong. But also for me, it's just get on and make a decision and
Yeah.
don't keep.
Yeah, no, that's a brilliant one. Yeah, 100%. What's the best book you've ever read?
Um, my daughter is a bookworm, so I just usually get past what she's reading. But I suppose Love and War in the Apennines by Eric Newbury is sort of special because my not husband then, but now husband gave it to me to read when we first met, and it's just a obviously very descriptive piece about escapee and prisoner of war escaping and being taken in by the mountain village people.
I haven't read that. I'm writing it down.
Yeah. So
Right.
I mean, it's published in 1971, so it's.
I'm going to read that. Sounds good to me. Okay, if you could meet any historical figure, who would it be and why?
I think Nelson Mandela, possibly, because we spent the year in South Africa just when he became
Yeah,
president, and it was a really interesting time to be there. And I think, okay, he was not perfect, but he was an incredibly powerful figure in
yeah.
making change happen.
A leader who tried to bring people together
Yeah,
instead of
yeah,
drive
and
them
it's
apart. Imagine that.
yeah, I know. And at the time we were there, because it was 95, it felt a very positive time.
Yeah, I think I've got Long Walk to Freedom on the
Oh,
bookshelf behind me
yeah,
somewhere.
yeah. No, we read it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
No,
I
that's
think I
good.
think I
Yeah,
have.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay. Lastly, then, what's your all-time favorite song?
Oh, yeah, I'm not very good at this. Well, it probably would have to be Into My Arms, which is Nick Cave. But it probably wasn't when I was young, but it is as a mature adult.
Yeah,
So,
it's a heartbreakingly beautiful
mm.
song, isn't it? I love it. Yeah. All right. Helen, it's been lovely to speak to you. Thank you so much for coming on. I know you are very, very busy getting ready for the show. So, yeah, we do appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you. It's a real honor to be able to do it. So thank you very
Yeah,
much.
and I'll see you down there in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, brilliant. Yes, and more the merrier.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening at home. Thank you for all the nice messages and comments about the podcast we've been getting lately. It's very much appreciated. Do look out for new episodes coming soon. The FFCC podcast that I'm doing, we need to talk about farming, putting that out through the Rock and Roll Farming channel. So do look out for those bonus episodes, and also the Talking Crop series I did with Goodyear Farm Tires, which I'm going to be putting out through the channel. So look out for those coming soon. Thank you for listening, and hope to see you next time. I've been Will Evans. This has been Rock and Roll Farming. Thank you and good night. That's it. All done. That was easy.
Sorry, I just waffle too much.
No, not at all. Everybody says
Can you
that,
edit
but
it out?
everybody says that, but no, you didn't at all. It was, yeah, it was brilliant.
Okay. Well, no, thank you for doing it. But yes, no, I do rabble on rather. So.
No, it's one of the joys about this podcast anyway, because you get people onto what they're passionate about, and yeah, away they go. It's brilliant. So this will be out on Tuesday morning.
Okay, brilliant.
So,
Thank you. Because I mean, I obviously have listened, but yeah. So my colleagues are saying, where will it be? So,
be out through my podcast channel, through Rock and Roll Farming, and then I'll put it on social media and all that
okay.
as well. So I'll
Is it very cheeky to ask if do you do a little description
yes,
bit?
I was going to say I'll put
Could
the
you
website
put
and
if
what,
I sent could I put the website and I
of
mean
course.
we could even say people who have listened to it can have the Friends of Woodland Trust 10% discount or something.
Sure, yeah, you can
If
definitely
I
do
just
that.
drop you an email, use what you
Yeah, yeah.
want. I mean, don't I don't want to make it commercial.
No, it's fine.
Um,
Very happy to see that. I'll just put it in the show notes. So yeah,
yeah.
yeah. No,
Okay,
no,
thank you. I'll
just
drop you that now.
fire that over and I'll put it in.
Brilliant. And I'll get my colleagues to, the Woodland Trust and Soil Association to
I'll tag yeah, I'll tag Woodland Trust in the social media posts as well.
would you, I mean, you could tag Soil Association
Yeah,
or
okay.
not, because it's only if you want to, but I mean, obviously it's
Yeah,
a
I will
joint
do.
event. So,
Just make a note to do that. No.
but thank you. And I was
I
just
will,
going to say, if I can't remember your wife's name because you keep calling her to always call her the current Mrs.
the present
Evans.
Mrs. Evans.
Yeah.
I only yeah, if when you meet her you'll
Well,
I
I did
just
meet her briefly when you were at Oxford, but
oh you
I'm just
did,
saying
that's right.
if she was able to get away from the farm, and I appreciate it, then obviously we'd be more than happy to give her a ticket.
Oh right, okay. Oh, thank you.
Just let obviously
Oh,
that.
I'll see what
Yeah,
she's
yeah,
up to.
yeah.
Let
She
her
might
know.
be quite
Thank you. Do
interested
appreciate it.
in this wacky Caribbean guy who's got the market garden on
She
on
would
the
be
farm.
very much so. Yeah,
And there's
she
a
would be.
wonderful lady who's just doing a flower, has been there for about 3 years doing flowers as well. So,
Yeah, okay. No, she would be.
but
I will mention it to
I
her.
appreciate it's
Thank you.
not easy. But yeah, if she does, just let us know and we'll get you a ticket.
All right.
Another ticket.
Brilliant.
But thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Lovely to speak to you.
Yeah, and you.
All
Bye.
right. Take care. Bye.